Hi, everybody. It's good to see you guys.
Hello, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Oh, we got Jim and Jim right next to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
It's good. It's good to see David and Brian, and it's good to see my friend Richard. So, and everybody else. Good to be here. I think I'm going to mute myself now.
No, wait for us to do that, Jim.
I need one of those buttons at the chess center. So our Saturday tournament, I can just hit mute.
That might work. That could work.
It would that button be strong enough for Saratori though?
That's hard to say.
You might need 2 or 3 for him.
Hey, I have not muted myself yet, but I was wondering if we could have a little bonus for anybody who stays for the whole deal today. And that bonus would be maybe Lev could show us a cool puzzle.
Good grief.
All right, we'll talk about that at the end, Jim.
Okay, thanks.
We'll leave you in suspense. But yeah, we do appreciate everybody being here for, everybody who's come for the last 2 weeks also. It's really nice to have a good crowd of people here on these. So yeah, I think, are we about ready to get started, do you think?
I guess we could try.
So,
If nobody has a problem.
So yeah, I'll throw it over to you. You should be able to share your screen, I think.
It says right now I can. All right.
Yeah, I do a co-host.
Yeah, so before we do that though, yeah, we're talking about things that are kind of paradoxical master moves even, or things that we don't understand about some of the rules or guidelines to follow in chess today. And I went through 3 pretty weird positions. Hopefully I didn't copy anything anybody else is going to do or use anything somebody else was planning on using.
That's not possible, Ken.
Oh, it's okay. Well, I knew it wasn't possible from you, Cliff, but I thought Lev was somewhat sane, so it was
No. Lev's as unique as Lev can be. You're not picking the same things as Lev. No.
All right. Well, the first one I took was from a game around 1820, which actually they don't know when exactly this game was played, but the historians in chess seem to be pretty much convinced that it was played. Is everybody able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So it was 2 players that perhaps people have heard about, Louis Le Bourdonnais and Alexander de Chapelle. Oh, and anyway, they were 2 of the top players in the world at that point, maybe even the two top ones. Since once Philidor had died, they became de Chapelle probably became the top one in the world. You'll notice this is a kind of weird position though, and like Jakob Niestad is a chess historian. He figured maybe this was from an odds game. Because at some point, like some certain players would only play with odds. For instance, Paul Morphy would only play like pawn and move odds at a certain point in his life. Or Steinitz offered to play God pawn and move odds at one point in like 1900. At any rate, this position looks very strange. I think they decided probably there were a couple pawns in place of a piece here, something like that. At any rate, you'll notice white is way behind in material. Black has 2 rooks and 2 bishops for a queen, knight, and bishop, which not too far apart, but then there's a lot of black pawns on the board. Also, what the heck is the white king doing on e7 in a middle game? And that looks pretty odd as well. All right, and you would say, hey, this looks pretty much like black is going to have things their own way. Except Mr. Chapelle decided, oh, let's trade pieces. Usually we wouldn't trade pieces if we're behind in material, but he had a reason to. Oh, come on. Okay. And the bishop was the best defender. So he said, look, I can trade off pieces as long as I'm getting rid of the best defensive piece that somebody's got. And black has not many choices here to get out of check. I mean, you could either have the king move to h8, or he could take with his pawn on h6. So let's see what happens if the king had walked to h8 first. All right. Well, white says, hey, look, free bishop. Thank you very much. I guess I can play another check. The king will be forced back to g8. And again, white says, hey, why don't I trade off pieces again, removing your best defender? Of course, this time it's a queen for a pawn. The g7 pawn is black's best defender as it's shielding white's queens from getting to h8, which would be checkmate. So white says, let's get rid of that. And now we can play another check, which pretty much locks the king into where, gosh, he's got one square. And white could play, well, that's a nice looking checkmate, right? All right, but that was only if the pawn didn't take the knight. So let's see what happens if the pawn had taken the knight. All right, now white's queen says, oh, look, I was shielded from h8 before. I'm not shielded anymore. I can get there. Which looks completely crazy because we'll only have a bishop left for white, really, as checkmating material. And pretty much everybody has known that you don't give checkmate with just a bishop. But white's king walks in and helps complete the mating net. And there's nothing that black can do about bishop going to f6. Actually, this is something like a study that Troitsky did, I think, in 1895. If anybody likes endgame studies, or Jim, you like puzzles, you might have noticed this. But this game was actually 75 years before that study. Okay. By the way, I mentioned Yakov Nistat was somebody who had done some chess history and knew about this position. He is pretty old. He's 96, but he is not old enough to have actually seen when this game was played. Okay, but he's 96 years old. He's still alive. I've got some books of his. And anyway, I thought this was a decent way to start because who mates with just a bishop in the middle game, and what the heck is that king doing on e7? He had to help out in the attack. All right, so let me see if I can change my screen sharing. Oh, come on, stop share. And then I got to share a different screen. Okay, where the heck is it?
Is that Le Bourdonnais, the guy who they showered the board with coins or something?
No, that was Frank Marshall's game.
Marshall's game, okay.
Yeah. Okay, why is it not getting to my Zoom screen? Okay.
Yeah, this guy, they showered it with French pastries.
What the heck is going on? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to share screen again. And let's go to this one.
Ken? Oops.
Okay, so there's a difference, hopefully a different board on with everybody. It's a middle game again. And this is from 1994, so it's a much more recent thing. The two guys playing here, one guy's name is Rosentalis, I think he's a GM. And Apple was a FIDE master, I think. And this was played in like a German team event, the Bundesliga, not on the soccer field. All right, you'll notice in this case, well, material looks a whole lot better. Okay, both sides have a queen, both sides have two rooks, both sides have a bishop, and both sides have 7 pawns. However, these pieces are not equal. You would say the 2 white rooks look a lot better than the 2 black rooks. The white bishop is not blocked in by his own pawns. And the white queen's got a pretty active position on that king side, even being on black side of the board. However, white decided they didn't see a way to break in. And truthfully, it's not really a clear way in. In fact, when I put it on the computer said the best move for white was possibly queen g5 to try and trade queens. So we're not going to be doing a direct attack here. However, in the game, white decided that they needed to open a second front. I said, look, I'm winning on one front, but black has kind of created a fortress. And so we need to make a second front. If we got, like, we're going to try to open up the king side over right now, but why don't we try to get something going on the queen side as well? So white begins with, oh, come on, get this going. That off. White begins with a4. Right? Black really doesn't have a whole lot that he's doing, but, and here's where white's going. White says, well, if I'm going to start on the queen side, who's going to be helping me out on the queen side? I need a piece over there. And it's not going to be the white bishop, or the white squared bishop. And the rooks are holding back black's main counterplay idea. Black wants to play pawn to f4. So white takes their queen from this really active position and sends it backwards. Now, when I was learning all things about attacking in chess, I did not learn much about having the queen go backwards to its home square to help out a future attack. So that was one of the first things about this game that seemed kind of odd to me. But usually these guys have reasons behind their moves, otherwise they wouldn't be a grandmaster. Or as I was reading with Daniel Naroditsky, he said, a grandmaster is not a grandmaster for nothing. They have some reasons behind their move. All right, so anyway, black starts to shuffle some pieces around, like, okay, I can move the rook a little bit, and white just says, well, you know, as long as you're going to give me some space, I'll take it. I can play pawn to a5. I can probably protect the pawn, move my queen to a1 at any point that I want to, and I'll have gained some of my space on the queen side that I was looking for. By the way, if you were paying attention last week, there is a pretty big hole in the black position here on d6. However, white really doesn't have anybody that's going to get there. As his bishop is the wrong color, the two rooks really don't look like they're going to belong on d6, at least not for quite a while. And the queen on d6 is not the ideal piece to go into that hole. So even though there's a hole there, that's not the main part of this position at all. All right, so black said, well, I can just start shuffling back. However, when somebody is shuffling back and forth, you're basically just saying pass and, okay, let's see if you come up with an idea. Now, excuse me. Years ago, I remember reading something by Kardekauer saying that if you don't know what to do, wait for your opponent to come up with a plan because it's sure to be wrong. And that's true in our club games, I suppose, but maybe not at the grandmaster level. All right, so white said, well, my queen gets behind the pawn. That's what I was planning on doing. And black is still really not doing a whole lot here. They're just trying to keep it concise, kind of the fortress idea that I mentioned. All right, and white is trying to break in here. So does anybody have any ideas how you would try to break in here if you were playing with the white pieces? No? Okay. Well, one thought would be to try and play b3 and get your rooks going behind it and open up the b file. Although once you played b3, that, yeah, we got a pawn off of white squares to help out black's bishop. So white decided, no, we're going to try to open up the file this way. Queen a3 is truly an odd looking move. We took that white queen from where it looked dominant on h5 to where we're going to let it get traded off on a3, which will double isolate the white pawns. It just looks like it's complete nonsense. And why would black go in for, or why would white go in for this? So black says, well, thank you very much. I'll take that pawn, or I'll take that queen and double your pawns. Okay, but now white says, okay, I can come on over. I'm on b2. Thank you very much. I'm going to get my second rook over to the b file, and we're going to cause you some serious problems over there. All right, so black is, again, shuffling their pieces over, trying to, one problem a defender has is maybe they lacked a little bit of space, and it's tough to maneuver sometimes to shift sides of the board when somebody's attacking a different side. Also, the white king is now able to come in. White's not in a hurry here. So white realizes, hey, even though this is probably still technically a middle game in most people's eyes, I can bring in the king a little bit because the center is completely closed and black is really not going to be able to attack anything. All right, and white says, finally, here comes the rook. And black is going to maybe try to bring their king over as quickly as they can. And you'll also notice here that white actually would like black to take to free off the d4 square for the white king. So even though that would give white a second set of doubled isolated pawns, the activity he could get with the king, he'd be very happy with. So black didn't take it. And white says, well, look, let's pile up on the d5 pawn. That poor little guy's got only 2 protectors. White's got 3 attackers, so black now does have to take. And white says, all right, I got to do what I wanted to. Make my pawns look like complete garbage. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawn islands, if you're counting them that way. You'd say 2 pawn islands for the A file, 2 pawn islands on the C file, 1 pawn island on the E5, and then the GH pawn islands. While black's only got 2 pawn islands, but that white bishop is really bad and the black bishop is really bad and the white king is really good. So let's see here. And white says, well, look, I can try to get rid of my double isolated pawns and trade them off. Black says no. And then white said, well, since you didn't do that, I've got a really crazy idea here. Anybody have a really, really crazy move? I'm not going to call out anybody by name, but I'm sure somebody here has it.
Could it be C6?
Could it be what, Jim?
Is it C6?
Nope. It's an exclam move. Why did you want to play C6, by the way?
Well, I was thinking maybe you could free something up somehow, some way. So
Yeah, you're freeing up the C4 square or the C5 square for your king, so that's not a terrible idea.
Maybe we should start with king d4.
Okay, just a natural looking move, right? We don't. Again,
Yeah, then maybe we're putting some pressure on d5 so that c6 makes a little more sense later.
Okay, all right. Well, let's see.
But yeah,
What the heck is rook b6?
I don't think that's the right move, is it?
Sure, because if black takes the pawn, the white a6 pawn queens. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Takes, you can't stop ace.
Pawn gets to a7, and the black king can't approach it, the rook can't approach it, the bishop can't approach it. And as far as I know, pawns don't go backwards to try and take care of it either.
Yeah, that's a wild move. Wow.
So, yeah, who would even consider a move like that? Well, evidently this guy did, because he's done it a couple times here where he's said, yeah, why don't you capture me and we'll see how that works. All right, and at the same time, by the way, we're tempoing a bishop, which, that doesn't hurt anything either. So the bishop leaves. And truthfully here, C6 is a reasonable idea. C6 makes a lot of sense now. That rook still can't be taken. If the pawn takes, we can just take back on C6 with our rook with a check, and we've freed up our square anyway. So the move you had with C6 was a good idea. All right. But white decided, no, we'll just get out of there. My rook will threaten to make the fork. Let's see what you're going to do about your bishop. Black really doesn't have many safe squares here. For the bishop could go to f7, but that allows a pawn to make a nasty fork. So basically we have to defend it with the rook. And then I think Oliver mentioned king d4 was coming. Yeah, that d5 pawn looks like it's going to be a tasty bit, right? How are they going to stop it? Besides, you'll notice here that black's got a pawn chain on d5 and c4. And white is following the idea of attacking the pawn chain at the base. All right, so black finally grabs that cumbersome a pawn. But white says, you know what? That d5 pawn will be mine. You can't get another protector on it. If you want to take the rook, fine. I'll capture you back with my c pawn, and then I can capture the d pawn at will. And at this point, black just resigns. Okay. However, I thought that was really pretty unusual because from the beginning here we had a queen where it looked really dominant that traded itself off on a3. We had white mixing up all their pawns, but they got active pieces for it. And white also had their king take a little stroll while they were still in the middle game. All right, so that's...
Hey, Ken, before you leave this one,
Yeah.
rather than that queen move to a3,
Yeah.
what if instead the queen moved to a2 and then b3 followed?
Okay, so let's see what you're talking about here. So you're saying... Okay, so you're saying here, if the white queen had gone to a2?
Yes.
To play b3, to follow it up, you're saying?
Yes.
Well, doesn't look like the most unreasonable idea I've ever seen. Certainly. But this guy had the plan. He probably had the idea in mind that he was just going to blow open the B file by hook or by crook and went through with his own plan. But yeah, I kind of like your idea here, Jim, of having the queen go to a2 and see if we can get to b3 that way. Of course, black also didn't have to capture. Black also didn't have to capture once we got to a3, right? Black could have just made a queen move somewhere else and said, okay, well, let's see what's going on here. But that would have given white complete access to the queen side that they wanted, as well as we can play b3 from the queen being where it was going to be, or the queen being on a3. So really, that kind of does work out to what you wanted, Jim. All right. Any other questions? All right, so let me stop this one and then go to the third one that I have, which I promise will be my last one for today. All right, share screen. Oh, I need to get to that right game now. Hang on a minute. Okay, so I want to go on this. Change my game. So here. And then go to share screen. All right, now some of you guys will recognize at least one of the names here. Actually, if you're really old in Roster chess, you might know both of the names. Okay, playing the black piece is Ben Dean, and actually a couple people might have actually seen me do this game. A couple of the kids might have seen me go over this game before. But I thought it was worth doing again because it kind of fit in with the theme. Okay, playing with the white piece is a guy named Noureddin Zayan, who was an exchange student from Morocco. And he moved over and he lived in Brighton for a year. In fact, he was one of the players who became Brighton state champion for high school. Okay, and this game was being played, I think Ben Dean's freshman year, Noureddin probably would have been a junior in college. This was a college team tournament that they played in Toronto. And it was funny because Ben was going to school in Massachusetts and Noureddin was going to school in Texas. They had known each other from playing about a year at the chess center, but it was very strange that, yeah, two players from different areas would meet up again in Toronto in the first round of this tournament. All right, now you'll notice that the ratings, I dug in and found the ratings here. Noureddin was certainly an established master, while Ben was not quite a master. And they had played before. Ben knew Noureddin was stronger than he was, so he wanted to mix up the game a little bit. Also, if you knew Ben as a kid, that's basically what he'd like to play anyway, is he wanted to get a tactical melee going as much as he could. All right, so let's
Hey,
start.
Ken, could we refer to that as razzle dazzle?
No, because it worked usually. Sorry, I couldn't resist that, Jim. All right, so anyway, we're into some normal looking stuff right now, and then plunks 94 out, which was not really a common line at that point. And actually, probably in 2000 or so, Susan Polgar wrote an article for Chess Life, and she mentioned this line and saying that, yeah, if you want to play this kind of thing, you'll really mix up the board a little bit. And I was, in my head, I was thinking, yeah, you can already say it's getting a bit tactical after this, but Don's not here to hear that, so I don't need to stay with it. All right, now keep in mind, Black is a player rated over 2,100. And his first three moves, he's moved a knight twice and his pawn to g5. That is certainly normal looking chess, right? The master really hasn't had a whole lot of choice yet, but if you take a look at the game from this point, it doesn't look like it's a game played between a master and a candidate master. It looks almost like beginner chess. All right, so at this point, yeah, again, we see those double isolated pawns appear for Black. It does give them a little bit of activity maybe on the G file and lets his bishop out. But White's got a great pawn center. He hasn't made any, well, humongous weaknesses in his position yet. And usually if somebody has a center pawn duel, you fight for it. And when I first was shown the game, I assumed that Black was going to play d5 here, but then I realized, no, that's not Ben's style. He wants to do things to a beat of a different drummer a little bit. And e5 makes a lot of sense to give White triple isolated pawns, although the computer did like d5 more. But obviously, White's not going to take that. So White protects his pawn. And to be honest, it was very surprising to me that the computer actually gave Black a slight pull here. Very slight, but somewhat of a pull here. And we all learn early on that you don't bring your queen out early. So naturally, this candidate master brings his queen out early. And if you've known Ben, you'll know he's now a FIDE master, and he's tied for first in the Marchand a couple times. So he's certainly no slouch. I don't think he's beaten you lately though, Lev, right? I don't think that's happened.
Oh, we've played one game and ended in a draw.
Oh, you only played one game. Okay. All right. But black has noticed the weakness. And actually, by weakness, I meant, in this case, unprotected pieces or an unprotected pawn. So he's aiming at an E3. And that's the kind of thing that a lot of attacking players notice right away is they say, you know, I'm not looking for the weakness. I'm just looking for unprotected things that I can attack and go crazy after. And we also know that black bishop will be able to go to H6 and join in on this attack. So white has to protect that pawn twice. The problem is, well, the queen can do it once, but we need a second piece to do it. And in this case, the master found his king is going to be a second piece because nobody else can do it. He also did not want to block his bishop in with his queen. He didn't want to walk into some sort of pin by moving his queen to say C1 or even E2, because the black queen would be going after the pawn, the pin pawn, and getting to the queen maybe, or the bishop would be. So he says, where's my queen gonna go? Well, he decided his queen was going to go to E1. And since the king was going to be defending the pawn, the king will just move over anyway. And black said, look, I'm putting the pressure on the pawn. And the white queen goes to E1. So if anything, this looks even less like a normal chess game than the other position did. A few moves earlier, rather. Again, black is eyeing where are there unprotected things. And he notices, well, E4 is not protected, H1 is not protected, B2 is not protected, and A1 is not protected. C2 also is not protected. So which one of those things should we go after? And he decides, let's go after B2 and C2. Which doesn't look like it could happen right now, but as soon as that pawn captures back, black says, here's my path, queen C1. Now, I also remember being told in chess that you don't just attack with two pieces. You try to get your whole army out to do the attacking. But black has managed to be attacking with two pieces, and is doing pretty well. In fact, the computer still says this position is basically even. Maybe black is a little bit better, like 0.05 or something. So not enough to say they're better. All right. And white's got two main choices here. They can either put the queen on C3, or they can move their knight to C3 and play this as kind of a gambit. And that's what the computer came up with as well. Okay, so the master decided, no, let's play knight C3 and give black a choice. Is black going to take on C2 or B2? And when this game was first played, and Ben showed it to me about a week after he played it, I put it on my computer at the time, and the computer really couldn't decide which pawn was better to take, C or B. Do we take the C pawn and say check, or do we take the B pawn with the idea of taking maybe the C pawn later with a check, or we just have a free escape? And at first the computer said, yeah, of course you take the C pawn. And then it changed its mind to take the B pawn, and then it went back to the C pawn. More modern idea is just take the C pawn and not worry about it. But, okay, Ben decided he was taking the B pawn. Okay, which, yes, there's a rule that would probably tell you don't take that one. B is for bad. Or some of the old timers might have heard, don't take the B pawn with your queen even when it's safe to do so. Kind of like a Sicilian poison pawn variation. Okay, even though it looks safe for black, maybe they shouldn't have taken that one. And white protects the C pawn, so you're not getting it with check. And my rook would love to come to B1, and yeah, we'll chase you around the board and we'll see if you attacked was a bit premature. Okay, well, black says, no, I'm still attacking here. The white queen on E1 is guarding C3 and a1. So we're going to say, you know what, queen, make up your mind. You can defend one or the other, but you won't defend both. So the queen says, well, I'm taking the bishop and you can have the rook. All right. And at this point, again, the computer still says even. Oh boy, what happened here? Did not want that. Sorry about that. All right. So Noradine plays what looks to me like a crazy move, and it looked to Ben like a crazy move. I'd always heard you do not give up a double rook sacrifice unless you see the end. But yet, Black is being offered the second rook. At the time, Ben told me, or after the game rather, Ben told me he knew that something was fishy going on here, but he looked and didn't find it. So he said, well, I'm going to spend some more time. It is, after all, a rook. And he spent about 20 minutes on this move and couldn't figure out what was going on. So we said, you know what? I need to see what it is. Even if I lose the game, I want to find out what this guy's got in mind. And if he doesn't have anything good in mind, I'm going to get a nice win against him. So, okay, by the way, if the queen had gone to b2, this is really not pretty. All right. White says, hey, look, now I do have all my pieces going into this game. And I can send in the knight for some extra support here. And oh, look, there's this going to be a problem on c7. Rather a big problem on c7. Queen says, well, yeah, but if you're going to get my rook, I'll get your rook. White says, well, I get the check. But Black says, no, if you want the rook, you can have it and let my queen go to g5. And you are toasted here. In fact, the Black queen probably has to capture the thing on d5 relatively soon, where it just looks really ugly. So yeah, if he didn't capture, that was going to be really rough. So he does end up capturing. And White says, look, I can go into knight d5. Now, again, at this point, the computer says it's still even. However, the move here is really pretty tough. There's actually two moves that could be played here. Neither one of them develop a new piece that are any good. One is h3, is a good move here. And the other one is c6, which actually blocks the development of your knight. But the key for Black is they have to stop queen g5 from coming in to threaten the mate on e7. And those two moves do that. Rook g8 looks like it does it, but it doesn't quite, it's not quite effective enough. Okay. Actually, let's go with h3 for a minute. All right, after h3, the bishop would be able to lock in things, and then the computer went straight to 0.000, whatever, and says, yep, the game is completely even here. I think the analysis was something like the pawn would capture on g2, the bishop would take back, and then the Black queen is free to come out. But White's got this whole army to do things with. Okay, so let's go back here. Unfortunately, Ben played d6. And that did not stop the queen from coming into g5. So she said, here I am. All right, so we could stop mate by developing piece. How Morpheus, right? We used the piece to do something and develop at the same time. But Black just merely pins the knight. And Black has no choice but to run. White says, well, here's a check. And if the king walks to g8, we're going to be able to play knight f6 checkmate. So the king has to walk back. And the queen says, okay, I got into f6. Now I'm going to play my checkmate on e7 or checkmate on h8. And that made Black resign. All right, so actually, and I wrote king d7 here. He didn't really play that, but okay, I just wanted to show this. One idea Black could play here, which is pretty funny, is queen takes g2, And when the king takes, then the black rook walks to g8, check. And you'll notice the material is actually even. It's strange, but okay, you'll see a knight and a bishop for white and a knight and a bishop for black. You'll have an extra knight and queen for white. Black's going to have 2 extra rooks and 2 extra pawns. So material would look pretty even, but the white army is ready to play. The black army would not be. In fact, white would block with the knight and say, yeah, I'm coming on f7. Thank you very much. Black has to take that. And white could say, well, you know what? Actually, why did they put queen takes g5 here? I think white can do better than queen takes g5, right? No, I guess it's check. So maybe that's the best. All right, get out of check. King walks over to f8. And white goes again through that same progression to get to h6 and f6. And the game would be over here too. There's no way to avoid mate this time. All right, so even though this one didn't quite work out for white or for black, he was very close to making this work without following many of the ideas that you normally would use in chess. He brought his queen out early. He captured the b pawn. All right, he attacked with only 2 pieces. We know we're not supposed to do those things, but it almost worked here because there are exceptions to most of these chess rules or guidelines that we know of. All right, any questions about this one? No? Okay. Well, then I will stop screen sharing and I will turn this back over to Lev. All right. Did you guys want to take a break first?
Yeah, real quick, 5-minute stretch in place. That'd be okay?
That okay with you, Cliff and Lev?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll pick back up with you, Cliff.
Yeah. Now, Ken, just on a side note, that position up to e5, that was like the height of fashion against that line in the 80s. Okay, that was like mainline stuff. But the thing is that was all considered that black's play was too good. That the whole idea of bishop h4 was suspect. And that's why they quit playing it, just because of the way Ben played that. So that he was dead on there, you know. That play on the dark squares, picking up that bishop, that, you know.
Yeah, well, he didn't know that according to what he told me afterwards.
Well, he just found it, you know. But
yeah, because he played it in December 26th, I think, and was showed it.
Well, no, Ben was never a theory hound. Okay, you know, he was never a big studier of you know, the latest theory from Moscow. Yeah.
No, he made up his own usually.
There you go.
Like if you've ever played the Carol Khan against him, you know that.
Well, yeah. Well, no, that stuff he plays is just silly though. Wait, no. I mean, when Dave Hayes is beating him, you know, pretty, you know, easily with the black pieces, you know, something he's playing is not right. Which that was the case.
I'm saying Ben was playing. What if Ben had a thing? He had it against Lonnie Quartler. I remember one year he was crushing in the New York State Championship.
Right. No. Okay, but Lonnie doesn't play theory. Dave studies the position and will refute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dave's gonna play an opening better than anybody else in the world except you.
I'm a fan of the Carol Khan. I'd love to see this variation. If you could quickly show us.
No, not me.
I can show you the beginning of it's basically he's playing the Black Mirror Deemer against the Kharroubi. Yeah, that's, you know, and it, you know, it doesn't give white anything. In fact, it gives black an edge with best play.
The bishop c4 on move 2?
What's that?
Is it bishop c4 on move 2? Is that
No. That's the Carlson funny, what they call a hillbilly gambit. No, not that. I actually did coverage of that in one of my lectures, but no, that's a silly gambit.
No, it's after you take e4. Ben played f3.
f3? Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Just like Cliff said, like there's a Black Redeemer Gambit except for McBride time.
Right. No, there's nothing redeeming about it for white. What was good is it was a wide open position and Ben's great position. So if you made a mistake, you got checkmated.
And he started analyzing when he was like 13 years old or 12 years old on his own.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time on the position. But, you know, the position objectively it's not good.
All right. I'll mute myself and let you guys go to action.
Ken, I wanted to ask if I could get the name of that second game so I could like write it down and look at it.
Yeah, the game was, let's see, it was Rosentalis. It's Rozentalis versus Apple.
Okay. Which is who?
You say it again, Ken? Ken, are you muted?
Is Ken muted?
Oh, I found it.
Okay, yeah, it was Rozentalis versus Apple, Appel, back in like 1994.
Thank you. Mute yourself again.
I think the tournament was from 1993 to 1994, so it could be either year.
Yeah, I managed to find it. It's an Alpine's defense if you're looking for it.
Okay. All right, as long as you found it.
Okay. We're still on break or not?
No, we're ready to go.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Hey, for my presentation, I was going to take a couple of things that I think are misconceptions. I think in the United States, we always look like we have two players that were just, you know, the only phenomenal players that we ever had, Morphy and Fischer. And, you know, they both were arguably two of the greatest forces ever to play chess. But there's a third force that I'd like to maybe argue the case today that should be included in that group, who's just, I don't know, I'm really impressed with the level that he achieved. Now, it's Yasser Seirawan, and the thing is, he was growing up in Washington State, not, you know, New York City, where he had access to Washington Square Park and endless masters to play games with as a 5-year-old or something. But, if you take, you know, Morphy, he was playing against players that got a lot of their knowledge from books. He had the access to books. So there wasn't like a disparity in what he had available to him. But here you have Yasser Seirawan, somebody from reasonable means, not, you know, he's not an ultra wealthy individual, and he's not somebody who's flying all over the world and they're flying in world champions like the Polgars did to, you know, try to, you know, create a super player. You got a guy who didn't even start playing organized chess until he was 12 years old. Okay. And now he's in a hotbed of chess in Washington State. No, you know, I mean, that's not the recipe for success. I mean, if you want to stack up the negatives for yourself, that's as high as you need to stack them up. I mean, today, if you're not threatening to be a GM at 12 or 13, you're washed up. You're not going to be a great player. I mean, come on, you know, what? You're 13, you're not a GM yet? Forget it. Back it up, okay? But here's a guy who didn't even start playing seriously until he was 12. And to make matters worse, he wasn't a big studier. He was too involved in his life and that. So he kind of chose to make systems that would allow him to achieve success. Like he wouldn't play, so much E4 or D4 and all these, 25 moves of theory that probably a lot of his contemporaries were playing. He would try to play C4, where maybe people knew a little less, and he had his own plans. Now, for me, in the age without computers, and he doesn't have like Kasparov and Karpov, a whole team of seconds working on his every move in the opening. Okay, it's very impressive to me what he was able to achieve, and I wanted to show this game today. The position's kind of interesting too. He played in 1980 against Viktor Korchnoi, who's arguably the greatest player who never became world champion. He had almost dead even couple of matches with Karpov that he lost very narrowly. There was only one of them where he really got run over by Karpov. But, and here Karpov's one of the great world champions. So in any case, let's take a look at how he solves problems in this game, and he puts a touch to this that's uniquely his. Okay, so he starts off with his patented C4. Okay, his opponent plays knight to F6, and he plays knight to C3. And Viktor Korchnoi was probably one of the great theorists in the Nimzo-Indian, so he's hoping that Yasser's just going to play D4, and he's going to get to play bishop B4, and you're going to suffer as white. Okay, he knows, all these lines and with incredible depth and understanding. Okay, but Yasser wasn't interested in playing any of his lines, and he had prepared this surprise for Victor. And he played E4. This is the Floor McKennis variation. And the idea is he's avoiding those sharp lines in the Nimzo-Indian by playing this. Okay. Now, Black has two real choices here. They can go with C5 and let me just show this, I guess. C5 and E5, knight back, knight to F3, knight to C6, D4. This is a very interesting gambit, okay? And what white gets for the sacrificed pawn is a very, there's some very critical squares in Black's position on the dark squares that his dark squared bishop is going to try to be poking at. It's not so easy for Black to consolidate this, even though he does have two central pawns. But Victor didn't want to discuss this day, but it's an interesting line. I figured I'd include it. Okay, and instead of C5, he played D5. Okay, now this is probably the most popular line. And white plays E5, D4, takes, and takes the pawn, D4. Okay. Now, at this point, white has this strong pawn center, but Black has damaged white's pawns and hasn't given up the bishop pair. Okay. So Black is just going to put pressure on the white center. Okay. And the idea is that, I don't have any weaknesses as Black. I've fixed these two pawns. There's always going to be a weakness left here. We're either going to have hanging pawns. We're going to have pawns that are fixed on the C4 and C3 square. Sometimes you can build up with like B6, bishop, A6, knight, C6, A5, and try to gang up on C4. There's a lot of things that could go on, okay? But, white's under pressure. So white has to develop, and he develops with a tempo, okay? This bishop G5 really leaves the queen in a bad way. For instance, I think even if he just like takes here, he ends up like getting his queen into a whole issue. Yeah, it's like, and you can just recapture this thing. You obviously have to protect against that. So in the game, after knight f3, Victor just played h6. Okay, bishop d3, takes, and now we've reached the critical position. Okay, we have our hanging pawns that Lev talked about last week, and they can be strong or they can be weak, but obviously one of the goals for the side that has, you know, the chore of playing against them is he would like to probably exchange some minor pieces. So if white were to play bishop to d2 and allow this exchange, it's going to be easier for black to try to target these. And in the game, Yasser said he knew, you know, Victor would play this move, and that up till then, I think everyone had played bishop d2, but he was afraid that after bishop takes, queen takes, and knight c6 right away, the pressure against his center was too good, and black would have a favorable game that was easier for him to play. Okay, now this is 1980. So I just want you to remember this. And he came up with this little pitfall for Victor playing king to f1. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm sure Victor Korchnoi was a little surprised when he saw this move. Okay. And he went to thinking. Okay. And Yasser was really excited because he prepared everything here. All right. And when this knight hit this, okay, he just guarded it with the bishop. And he's thinking, if he just castles, I'm going to play queen e2, d5. It's going to be over. I've crushed Victor Korchnoi. Okay, he's pretty excited. And then, even though Yasser had spent all these hours preparing this, Victor surprised him with a little piece of dazzling defense, an only move, one of those moves where, like, you know, you think everything your opponent does, you've got it worked out, but then they play this move and you can't even figure out anymore how should you still have the advantage, or, you know, he plays bishop to c5, and out of nowhere, he hadn't even considered this move, okay? Because if these pawns are ever, you know, denigrated by being like doubled up here, you know, with an exchange of bit, this is just a nightmare position for white. That's not even consideration, right? And right now we've got 3 attackers on there and only 2 defenders immediately. So this is starting to not look as happy as what it once was. So here he dropped the bishop back to c2. So now his queen guards that square. And Victor just castled. Now it's not so easy to see how he maintains his advantage here. So he figured he's got to threaten the mate on the long diagonal, okay? But now, Victor, this is why he went on a big think and came up with this bishop c5 idea. He has this move. There's no mate anymore, and now there's a lot of guys ganging up on d4, and it's not going to be such an easy thing to work out. And Yasser was kind of, you know, taken aback, obviously, because he thought he'd had this position all worked out, and now all of a sudden, within a few moves, he's suffering. He's really, you know, having to do some hard work here to keep his position afloat. So he wants to keep his d pawn, so he plays rook d1, and now Victor plays king to f8. And this is pretty annoying. Now there's no entry into h7 with check, and everything looks like it's going to work out for black, and white's left with this weak d pawn. So Yasser, there's a lot of possible ways to proceed here. I mean, for instance, does anybody see what might be one of white's plans?
Cliff, what
Yeah.
about bishop to a3?
You know, that's funny that you mentioned that, but that was one of the first things Yasser said he looked at too. Okay, and you know, it's a reasonable idea because you're removing some of the pressure. If he exchanges, it's with check. Okay, so white's kind of maybe consolidating, but let me ask you a question. What kind of pawn structure is this?
Hanging pawns.
Okay, so that hasn't changed. Did we go to all this trouble of putting the king on F1 and avoiding the dark squared bishops so we can now do it? What do you think, Jim?
Probably not.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That rubbed him the wrong way, too. I didn't go through all this trouble putting my king on F1 and everything, so I can just accede to the exchange of those dark squared bishops now. That kind of, he said, no, I'm not good with that. Okay, I went through this trouble. I'm going to keep it. And he finds this really elegant move, queen to e4. So now he's unpinning the pawn, okay? And he's repositioning his queen, but he's keeping it in the center. See, like if it would have been exchanged on a3, it would have been out of the center too. Okay. Now he also stops here, plans with b6 and like bishop a6, hitting that dangerous light square diagonal that did have his king and queen on it. So this little step to the side, queen to e4, that's really a high class move. That's the kind of moves that allow you to beat, you know, some of the greatest players who ever played the game. And Sirwan did that too. Sirwan beat Kasparov. He beat Karpov. He's really a phenomenal player. He's kind of underappreciated. But in any case, in this position, Victor said, I'll just slide my bishop back, okay, and I'm still going to continue to put pressure on you. And Yasser said, it's time for me to throw my H-pawn. Now, before Alpha Zero, and this is even before Simon Williams, okay, not everyone just pushed their H-pawn when they were playing the second highest rated guy on the planet, okay? So he was kind of, you know, feeling himself here when he pushed H4. He was kind of proud of that move. And Victor wanted to just exchange queens and say, you know, we'll just play this endgame, and I think I'm going to be more than okay here. And Yasser said, you know, no way. I'm not playing an endgame with you. He's backing up, no trades. And Victor said, okay, I'll just shift my queen to the queen side. And this is probably the weakest move so far. This probably gives white a little something solid, because the queen ends up a little misplaced on the queen side. So let's see how Yasser tries to push through here. He holds things initially with bishop b3, and now the knight is repositioning itself, and Yasser is playing h5 because he couldn't lift his rook on h3. He had to go all the way to h4 to be able to allow it to enter the game. Now, if he had played the other way, it would have been a little more solid, bishop to d7. But in the game, he chose b6. Okay, and now this is with a tempo. And he plays d5. Okay. Now, he could have played the queen into h7, but it doesn't work as well as playing d5 first, because of the fact that in this position, okay, he played bishops. Now, if he would have played b takes c4, there's no way to hold the light squares. He's just going to put the bishop on c2, and we're going to have a breakthrough on the queen side. I mean, king side, sorry. Okay, there's things like bishop f6 coming, knight h5. It's just a disaster. So, in any case, Victor played it correctly. He played, oh, sorry, the strongest move. Played bishop takes. Okay. But now, after rook h4, he took is recaptured. Now, does anybody see what square this rook is headed for?
G5 or G4.
G4, yeah. That's just going to be too much pressure probably. So black is trying to prepare a defense. Rook G8. Now it's actually funny here. Yasser missed the easiest continuation here. Can anybody spot the simple win? In the game, Yasser played rook to d7, which is still winning, but it gave Victor a chance to get some practical chances with the queen sack, and they still had to play some moves. It was still in favor of white, but you know there's no reason for that. There's a simple couple move win here.
Keeper rook takes e5.
Knight takes e5, you said?
Rook takes.
Rook takes e5. Yes. Because if pawn takes, what's your...
Rook d7.
Rook d7, no. No, this isn't right, I don't think. Just a sec. No, I think we... When it takes bishop e5, he could have played... Oh, it's not, it's not here yet. Sorry. My fault. I'm getting too early in the game. Oh, no, that was it. Okay, wait a minute. So he could have played, instead of rook d7, he could have played... I'm going to have to turn on the engine. Because I know it's here. There's a simple solution. Knight takes e5. It's funny. It's check. That's why. See, I was going, I'm hanging the rook on that. I wanted to play that. I'm going, wait a minute. It's not right because the queen's hitting the rook, but it's check. See, and the point is on the check here, this check is a kill. Oh, wait a minute. No, I missed a move. There. B4. Deflecting the queen first. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what's funny about this was in the era when there was no computers and things like that. And this same position actually occurred many times. And I wanted to see how we, as players, use, here we go, new share. Okay, let's see, the next one was in 2012. Here you had some of the players that you'll recognize. Nifanichi is Jan. He's one of the, probably top 10 players in the world. Okay. And he's playing a guy over 2,600, Alexandrov. And this was in 2012. And here you have them playing the same position. And Nifanichi plays what the stockfish on my computer says is the best move, bishop to d2. Okay. And on the exchange, his opponent doesn't play the move that worried Yasser, knight to c6, excuse me, he played castles. And you'll notice the hanging pawns here are really, this is very nice the way Jan takes advantage of this. Okay, so castles, knight to d7 instead of c6. Okay, queen to e3, rook to d8, queen to e4, poking at the light squared weaknesses. And now his opponent plays knight to f8, and it looks like he has pressure against Jan's center. Okay, everything's held. He doesn't really have any weaknesses. He seems to be doing okay. It's just his development's a little sluggish. Okay, and it's here where Jan really shows his understanding and starts to apply pressure. So he's putting pressure on b7. The queen drops back. And now c5. This, to me, is really masterful understanding of hanging pawns. See, these hanging pawns, normally, if you play a move like c5, it can be, it's usually either going to be winning or losing. If black gets a chance to blockade this d5 square, the game's going to be basically over. It's going to be positionally won for black. Okay, but if white gets these pawns moving, it's going to be great for white. But here, even though the pawns aren't moving, the lack of mobility of the black pieces, the knight is tied right now to f8 to protect the mating threats. There's pressure on b7. Okay, it's very hard for black to have any harmony in his position, and he's got a solid advantage, obviously. And the fact that a knight could even end up landing on d6, and he has all kinds of pressure here. You could double in the b file. It's just really a beautiful use of the hanging pawns, I think. It's kind of nice. But in any case,
so Cliff, black's position looks very cramped and slow in development, and meanwhile white has a very safe king,
right,
and space and
mobility and everything.
Yeah.
No, so the thing was, in the game, people make errors and things like that. The 2600 ended up holding a draw. Okay, but it's very clear who's better here. Okay, but I just wanted to demonstrate there was different ways to treat the position. But we'll remember that Alexandrov didn't play the Yasser approved defense for this. So let's see, okay, if we look at what happens a year later, this Alexandrov, he went to play a game and he said, that guy Nipanichi last year really put a lot of pressure on me in that position. I'm going to play it as white. Okay, so this is 2013, the year later, and Alexandrov's playing white against Fedosev, which, they're closely, about the same rating anyway. So in this position, we're getting our same line by transposition this time. Okay, and we have the check. He blocks, he exchange, and now he didn't play it, but he gets unlucky because now his opponent plays Yasser's suggested defense to this situation. The reason he wouldn't put the bishop on d2. Okay, so he plays the strongest move here, but the point is that black maintains the pressure now on these hanging pawns and never gives white really an opportunity to gain the freedom that Nipanichi did. And here he finds a little combination where, because he's going to end up winning this piece back for the two pieces for the rook, and now he's just up a pawn, black ends up winning this game. So it was really a bad story for Alexandrov. He ended up suffering on both sides of the situation. But now the last word that I wanted to mention in this is there was a game in 2019 last year by Gelfand in this position. Okay, and Gelfand's playing white. And we reach our same position. And on the check, he placed Yasser's recommendation. Okay, which, what's he doing? You know, it's funny because my computers, the engines on my computer said Bishop D2 was actually slightly stronger than King F1. Okay, and his opponent played a different move than Victor Korchnoi. He's obviously not a student of history, okay, or he would have known at least the Korchnoi defense. Okay, so he gets driven back, and now you can see white already is looking like he has more space and more development, and this is actually a very pretty game. Yeah. Just kind of all game long, white is just picking on black. He resigned here. But, I mean, the play in that game was really, really, really phenomenal, I think. And I found it interesting that he played the King F1 plan that Yasser, recommended back in 1980. And when I went to analyze this online on one of the online engines that's stronger than that one in my computer, it actually called Bishop D2 an error, and King F1 was the best move. So it's funny. You can't always even believe computers that you think are strong enough when they're 3,000. You have to get the stronger computers to get to the truth of the matter. But no, I just thought it was amusing. Any questions?
Yeah, Cliff. Did you ever actually show the conclusion of the Yasser game?
He played on for like I think it was like 10 or 15 more moves with the two pieces against the queen. It wasn't pertinent to the story or that interesting, I didn't think.
Okay.
I was trying to save time because I knew I had 4 games to get.
What was the actual result? Yasser won, or did
He won that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, he had an easy win that he missed though. But in any case, I mean, it was really a phenomenal game between the two. In any case, anybody else?
I just have a comment, and not really a question, but on the third move, you said that C5 and D5 were the main moves, so I was poking around, and I found that E5 is actually a move you can play on the third move. The point being that, like, C4, like, somewhat weakens D4, and you're getting kind of like a weird king's pawn position with the pawn on C4.
Okay, wait, I'm curious now. I want to see what you're... You're saying, look at move 3. Okay, you're saying for after this, just to play E5 right away?
Yeah, I've even found 100 games or so. I thought it was like interesting, worth pointing out. You can even do it.
Yeah, I'd be very, very quiet. I mean, here's the thing. Okay, that would make me, very quizzical. First off, like, look at the volume. D5, there's 1,000 games. C5, there's 224 games. E5, there's 92 games. Now, they do have under 1,700 championships that end up in the database. But what I'm saying is the thing that would appall me about this would be if you wanted to play in this move. Some people even play this move. And now it's your move. And it's not necessarily White isn't lost here, okay? You see what I'm saying? And White's a full tempo up in that other line because you're just playing it E6 to E5, right?
No, yeah, you're right. I just wanted to point it out. I used to play this line with White, so I don't know. That was worth mentioning.
Oh, for White, you used to play this like this.
No, I used to play the Aster's like a 3 E4 move, but I don't know. Not pertinent, I guess. I just thought interesting to bring up because like when you play C4 and E4, you're weakening D4 so much that like Black can try to get a grip on it. But you're absolutely correct. But yeah, you're down full tempo.
Right, and I mean, there's other ways to grab, control of D5 rather than that.
Yeah.
All right. But in any case, yeah, that it is interesting, but in a way, that's the thing, just trying to grab that control. That's what Ben was doing in the game in the Trapowski. So let me wrap this up and turn this over to Lev. You ready, Lev?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break, sure. Yeah, thanks, Cliff. That was awesome. Speaking of American chess talents, Caruana is probably not bad either. He should be in there.
Well, no, there's the modern guys, but their story isn't finished. Hikaru and Caruana. I mean, who knows what they're going to accomplish?
So, future world champion Caruana.
Hopefully, that wouldn't bother me. A kid from Brooklyn. That would be good. But no, I just it's funny because I really think sometimes they just forget about Yasser. I mean, he was really, really phenomenal. I mean, if you look at the style he played too, like the game he beat Kasparov in a rook ending where Kasparov was trying to overpress an even position. And he beat him in that position. I mean, he's just so solid. So his level of technique, it's funny because he talks with reverence for Victor Korchnoy's endgame, but he was not weak himself. He's very impressive.
Hey, thanks a lot, Cliff.
Thank you, Cliff.
No, you're welcome.
By the way, everybody, we do keep everybody muted, but if you want to speak, you just hold the space bar down and speak.
Thanks, Mike.
Nice to see everybody again.
Oh, hey, Matt. Yeah, nice to see you here too again.
Yeah,
You've been
always.
here every week?
Yep, definitely. Third week, third time.
Awesome.
So I learn and I have fun.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah,
This one's going to be fun. My goal is going to be to take all these chess rules that you guys have heard of and basically turn them upside down. That's my goal.
Oh, very fun.
Everything you thought you knew, it's going to be like... Hopefully
Oh boy, that'll be fun.
But yeah, it's a funny game. There's definitely no absolute rules and there's exceptions to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lev, before you start, I had a quick question for Ken. We were talking about the top players back then, Morphy playing odds. Who had the advantage in those odds games?
Never Morphy. He never had the advantage. Actually, in the one we looked at, sometimes when the guy offered odds, they analyzed it, since the computers came out, and found that the odds he was giving were actually helpful to him. Like he'd give up.
He could have like a knight on B1 if he could play rook on A1 to D1 faster or something.
Yeah, he gave up a rook for like 2 pawns in the move, and they said that actually probably helped him in this or something like that. Just weird. You wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
That was the computer analysis of that.
That back in that day, basically, if you were playing white, you had to sacrifice things, and if you were playing black, you had to take every sacrifice, and you either got checkmated or you were up like 5 pieces and ended up winning. But if you're playing Morphe, usually you got checkmated. All right, so it's been roughly 5 minutes thereabouts. So if we're all good to go, I will get started.
Yeah, good to go.
Sound good? All right, let me just set up my first position, and then I'm going to share my screen. All right, so everybody sees this board okay, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody sees my screen here? All right, awesome. So I just wanted to start with this position, and I've hidden the names of the players because I don't want to give anything away here. But I want to ask you guys, take a look at this position and just evaluate it. Who do you think is better? So white's last move was knight on c2 to e3. It's black to play here. And what's the evaluation of this position? And anybody who has some ideas or what they're thinking about, feel free to share it.
Black's king rook looks pretty stuck back there.
All right, I agree with that. This king looks a little funny on f8 also, right?
Yeah, it does.
It also seems like black is a bad bishop that's going to take a lot of effort to extricate.
All right, I agree with that. Bishop on e7 doesn't look too good. All of white's pieces actually look pretty active, right? Like white's developed everything. And also, if we compare the pawn structure, right? I mean, black has these doubled pawns. He has these split pawn islands. White's pawn structure is kind of perfect here with no weaknesses, right? So if we put all of that together and we look at, the pawn structure, black's pieces look a little bit awkwardly placed. White's pieces are all fully developed and harmonious. White's has perfect pawn structure here. Surely we would think that only white can be better here, right?
Lev, am I allowed to take the other side, or?
Cliff, yeah, please do say something.
Well, no, I think it's much more dynamic than all that. I mean, to me, honestly, the rook on h8 is, after h5, getting ready to be the best attacking piece money could buy. Okay.
All right. Mm-hmm.
And that bad bishop on e7 is very well centralized, and it's holding on to 2 central pawns that are very important to f6 and d6. There's a square on e5 for black's knight that's going to hit c4 and the f3 square. I don't know. It looks like a Sicilian, and it looks pretty dynamic. I couldn't even tell you who I thought was better, but I think it's very dynamic.
So yeah, you uncovered a lot of the hidden stuff in this position. So this rook right now, it's not doing anything. But after h5 and h4, especially combined with this queen on the long diagonal, white's king on g1 could feel a little bit uncomfortable. And this bishop on e7, although pretty passive right now, it does hold together this nice solid wall of pawns. And even though these knights look pretty active, you'll notice that they actually don't have any squares that they can really go to. All of those squares are covered by black's pawns. So actually, I'm going to flip the board now. So this was actually from one of my games, and I was playing black here. And in this position, black is actually better. Black has a definite, small, maybe medium advantage. Black isn't winning, but black is definitely better. And it seems so counterintuitive because, these pieces look awesome, right? We like the pawn structure, but really, what's more important is actually the king safety. And once you realize that all of white's pieces are actually kind of focused over here on the queen side, and particularly this queen is going to have a hard time getting over to g2 or something. And you know, this is pretty fast. H5, H4, rook can go to G8. This other rook can swing over like this sometimes. And as Cliff pointed out, we have a great square in E5 for the knight. So yeah, this position, all right, there's a lot more than just meets the eye initially here. And okay, I played H5 here, which is very logical. And already now you have to kind of deal with this idea of H4. And if you let me play H4 and you let me open up the H file, then you won't be able to recapture with the H pawn, because then I'll be able to invade on H1. And well, you know, even if we end up doing this and we trade the H pawn for the F pawn, that's definitely going to weaken White's kingside pawn structure a little bit. And you know, this diagonal will become a little bit tender. I could play maybe F5 and bishop G5 would be an idea there to hit on this diagonal when this F pawn is gone. And you know, it's actually hard for White to find a plan here. That's one of the bigger problems. So okay, here my opponent, well, I think he kind of felt he didn't really know what to do, so he played reasonable looking move. He played rook d4, and you know, he's just trying to shore up the h4 square a little bit. But okay, I can still play h4.
Hey,
And,
Lev, before you go on, what if
yeah.
rather than the rook lift, what if he had instead played h4?
That's a good question. Yeah, h4, that's probably the best move actually. So I would probably play h4 if I was playing white here. But okay, that doesn't come without its drawbacks. So, you know, for example, I could maybe play f5 here. And now actually I'm threatening to play f4, and I'm going to make that a target. So like, yeah, this could happen. You know, I mean, let's say you play knight g2 to cover that. And then I maybe just play rook g8 or something. And, well, you know, you can think the knight will come to e5. Okay, the c4 pawn might even be a target. And I can still try to play, you know, I can play, for example, knight e5, knight g6, and then f4. After knight e5 and knight g6, I'll actually also be threatening to take on h4. So yeah, you can definitely play this, Jim, but that pawn itself will become a target.
Nice.
And it's not going to solve all of your problems completely. So like the piece you really want over here, you want your queen over here. If you could play like queen g2 in this position, then you'd like solve all your problems. But unfortunately, White can't do that here.
Lev, is that maybe one of his motivations to play rook d4 to open up queen d1 as a possibility?
Yeah, that may be his idea actually. So yeah, I mean, he could also play queen c2 with the idea of queen e4. That also makes sense. But yeah, maybe rook d4. His idea was actually this: queen d1 and queen f1. It's a little slow, but yeah, that's the kind of thing you want to do in this position if you're playing white. You need to recognize that this queen is really badly placed because the action is happening on the king side. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, am I cutting someone off there? Do you want to say something, Cliff?
No, I was good.
All right. So yeah, so okay, after rook d4 though, it turns out I can still play h4. Because, you know, if you take and I trade rooks, well, all right, the g file got opened up and white is up a pawn, but you know, after a move like f5, the h4 pawn isn't really all that impressive. I'll probably win it back soon. And if I ever get this other rook to the g file, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So, okay, understandably, he kind of wanted to avoid that, and he tried to keep things closed to g4. But, well, I just keep my initiative on the king side to h3. This kind of prevents white from being able to shore up his king side. And now I'm also freezing the knight on e3. It always has to defend mate on g2. So in this position, actually, black almost has a decisive advantage already. This is funny. You know, it's equal material, and it doesn't seem like white should be in too much trouble. But actually, it's very concrete. There's not really a good way for white to deal with my idea of rook g8. And I'm just going to gang up on this pawn. I'm going to play f5 and then knight to e5. You know, I can play bishop g5 to remove this knight on e3. And it's really not obvious at this point. It was not obvious from the initial position. I'm sure my opponent probably I don't know if he sensed the danger here. But okay, once we play a few more moves, now it becomes a little more obvious that okay, after b4, f5, already there's some tactics. You can't take because this is immediately going to win. If you block, then I take, and your knight has to defend g2. Okay, king f1, then queen to h1 is mate. So yeah, it's already not so easy. You know, this break with c5, it's too slow, and my pieces are perfectly positioned to take care of that. So all right, he plays rook cd1. Okay, maybe his idea is rook takes d6. You know, desperate exchange stack like that might kind of change the game, make me more focused on the defense rather than on the attack here. But I actually don't even allow him that. I play rook g8, and if he plays rook takes d6, I'm not even going to bother taking the rook. I'm still going to do this because the knight is overloaded. So yeah, here it's kind of difficult to suggest a good defense. He plays f3, which is kind of the most reasonable. Try to block the queen out and defend the g-pawn. But now after knight e5, okay, I think it's becoming a little bit obvious what the idea is. I'm going to sacrifice on f3 and totally open up this the king side here. And you know, all the while, okay, this queen has been sitting on a4 the whole game. That's really what's biggest issue here. So okay, the game ended relatively quickly. He blundered here. Okay, I think king f2 just overlooks bishop h4 check. Because after this, and knight takes f3, this is like basically lights out. I mean, you can't even take the knight because you're gonna, at the very least, I can recapture my piece here, and this is gonna be totally devastating. So, yeah, okay, well, he tried to make things a little bit tricky. Knight d5, and okay, any move here wins for black, but I just took the rook, and after takes, bishop g5, threatening to take the knight on e3, because if this knight moves, then my queen can invade. Now he, okay, crazy again, sacrifice the other knight. And okay, at this point, white is just down too much material. So black is up a rook, and after a few more moves, he resigned, I think. He plays okay, queen c2, b5, queen takes f5, I took on c4, the rook comes back, and okay, after queen c8, he realized he's down a rook, and he has no attack. Okay, he doesn't want to trade queens. If he moves the queen, then I take on g4. So here he resigned. And okay, so yeah, kind of my theme today is I'm going to be showing you positions where the initial evaluation here is that black is better, but it's not at all obvious that black should be better. Okay, but once we play like normal moves, like h5 is a normal move for black. This rook is not playing, so you want to activate it. And, you know, white is playing, you know, look like pretty reasonable ideas. Rook d4, try to stop h4, maybe get the queen back in. But he just doesn't end up having enough time to get all this together. Like here, every move I'm making a threat on some, you know, with every move I'm making. He doesn't want to let me open up the h file, so he does this. And now after h3, you know, he just has no good way to deal with all of this pressure. It's just way too much. And yeah, I mean, here, it's also interesting. I like checking a second opinion. So sometimes engines will look at these positions and they kind of evaluate things a little bit differently. But I think even here, actually, Stockfish prefers black's position. Here we can check. And okay, it's not anything huge. Okay, you see it wants to play h5, but okay, it likes black's position a little bit. And okay, it's probably defending better for white, so Stockfish is good at defending. But yeah, even with such a great defender, Stockfish still would prefer black's position.
Hey, Lev, can I ask a quick question?
So yeah, go ahead.
So how in the world, or why in the world, would white have gone off on that crazy queen excursion to, what is it, a4?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So earlier in the opening, he played queen a4 check because it forced my king to f8. You know, it looked like a good move at the time, right? But yeah, I think earlier on, he probably should have realized that the queen doesn't belong over here. And I think if he had like sensed, if he had, I don't know, I'm not sure if he anticipated my h5, h4 plan, but okay. Here, if he had realized that he has to, you know, do something about this queen on the long diagonal, yeah, he probably would have played like queen c2, queen e4 earlier. But yeah, like that's the thing. It's not always obvious that your piece is not very well placed. So like the queen on a4, I mean, it looks like it's doing something. I mean, you know, it attacks this, you know, it looks at the knight, but it's just misplaced. It's on the wrong side of the board. The action's on the king side, and you know, all of white's pieces are stuck over here. So I like that example because it's kind of like, it seems like white did everything correctly, developed their pieces, you know, black is like playing here with a split rooks, the king is on f8, what is it doing on f8? But actually this king is pretty safe, white can't get to it, these pawns are all here. And you know, the goal of the game is checkmate, so you just look at the king safety. Black's king is much safer than white's, and you know, there's not really much white can do to kind of stop me from opening up the king side here. So yeah, but that was a good point, Jim. So yeah, did anybody else have any questions here?
I have one question. So,
but yeah, go ahead, Matt.
all right. So I'm recognizing that this is probably a game from a Sicilian, but I'm looking at the pawn structure. E6, F6, F7, D6. Which is the pawn structure name for this? I forgot.
So actually, this did not come from a Sicilian. This came from a hedgehog.
Oh, really?
So I think, yeah, it was some English hedgehog where, okay, I don't have the whole game here, but I think white opened with c4, and by transposition, I like fianchetted my bishop very early, and he fianchetted his bishop. The bishops got traded on the long diagonal, and I ended up here. That's basically what happened.
Yeah, I should have taken the hint with the pawn at e2. Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, actually that's a good point. The Sicilian is pawn to be here. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So yeah, but the pawn structure is like familiar with some Sicilian lines, but it's like the point is not relevant, but it's like similar to Sicilian lines, like classical Sicilian. I'm not sure. Maybe Cliff knows.
I think you're muted, Cliff.
Yeah, this is a standard structure. If the pawn was on e4, then you know you would figure it came from a Sicilian, maybe. But you know that structure with pawns on d6, e6, f6, and f7. That a lot of times that can come in a rouser. That's what you're studying right now, anyway, man. So
okay.
Yeah, white early on in the opening played bishop here and took on f6. So that's how we got this pawn structure, and I took back with a pawn, and that's how we got the bishop versus knight in balance also.
Okay, thank you, Lev.
So yeah. Thanks for asking.
So Cliff, Lev, does c5 here help white?
Oh, like playing pawn to c5?
Yes.
Like as a pawn sacrifice?
Yep.
Yeah, actually, you know, it's not such a ridiculous move to consider, because, you know, probably here, yeah, I'll just take, and then I'll kind of play like a normal position and play d5 and b5 and be up a pawn. But it does, you know, it does gain time. Your queen could probably swing over to f4, and, you know, with your queen being this close and ready to defend, you can always block the long diagonal. White probably won't get checkmated here. So, yeah, in fact, another way you could play this with white, this is also like classic. If you know, if you study games in this kind of pawn structure, people who wanted to like crush this opening with black, so like back in the 70s and 80s when this opening was popular, there was like this big debate between the people who played the hedgehog and the people who played against the hedgehog. You know, everybody who played white, they wanted to try and punish black because this opening was seen like kind of ridiculous. Because you get a position like this and then somehow black is winning games. So, but yeah, the way usually white tries to approach this, especially with these knights here, is some piece sack like knight d5. So like, for example, h5, you know, you could do it like after h4 on f5. Here, you could play knight d5. So, I mean, it's a little extreme, but, you know, you're going to get a couple pawns for it. And now, at the very least, white is the one who's attacking. So, I mean, probably black is, you know, I would still take black here. I have an extra bishop. But this is how white should probably play this position.
Great, thanks.
But yeah, there's a lot more than just initially meets the eye here. So the piece placement is very important. All right, so yeah, let me see if I can just do this. All right. So can everybody see this new position now?
Yes,
with
yes, we can.
Shabalov here. Okay, so I didn't change my screen. Okay, so this worked. So okay, this is a quick example because it kind of illustrates a point that we hear a lot of times when you're up in material, you want to trade pieces, right? So it's like a typical rule that we all hear. And in this position, I'm playing white, okay, against Alexander Shabalov. And I just have a simple question. Who wants to trade queens? Does white want to trade queens here, or does black want to trade queens?
Black will want to because he's the one getting almost mated.
Okay, say that again, Oliver.
Black probably wants to trade queens because his king's so safe.
Yeah, so that's actually the most important point here. Now white is up a pawn, right? So white has 5 to 4 pawns here, right? And normally, right, we would say, okay, white is up a pawn, so how do you win? You simplify the position, right? You trade the queens, then trade the rooks, trade the bishops, trade the bishop for the knight. And yeah, if you can trade all the pieces off and get a pure king and pawn endgame, you'll probably win. But yeah, here actually, again, the most important thing is the king safety. That king on g8 is very weak. And all it takes is some queen to invade somehow, or something to invade on the 7th rank, and it's going to be game over. And here actually I made a mistake. So I played queen b7, which, okay, I was in time pressure at this point, so this is kind of like a time pressure move. But I saw that he could play queen c6, and I kind of like went into this knowing that he plays this, because black doesn't really have any better move. He can't allow the queen to sit on the 7th rank. But actually, after this queen trade, a big part of white's advantage totally disappears. So, I mean, yes, white is still up a pawn. I mean, white still has every chance to play for a win, but black's king is not going to get checkmated anymore. So, he can defend a worse endgame, a pawn down, and actually that's what happened. So, the game continued. I brought my knight into the center. His rook got active, got some counterplay. He trades off my strong knight. And even though I actually stay up a pawn the whole game, so we trade off all these pawns on the queen side. But okay, he defended this position a pawn down very well. So I tried for a very long time. We played this endgame. We played for a very long time. Okay, nothing really happened. This is just a draw. And okay, eventually, I think I played on to the 50 move rule, and then okay, here I finally said okay, draw. But yeah, if we go back to just the initial position, like if I had kept the queens on the board, and you can do that by defending the c6 square. So, I mean, black will play queen c6 even if I don't play queen b7. So the way white should go here is actually play this very nice move, rook c1. And after the game, Shabalov told me that he was really afraid of this. Like after rook c1, he didn't know what to do. Because now this is pretty serious. This is a threat. This is a threat. There's no more queen c6. And just to give you an example of what might happen, because it's not clear how is black getting checkmated right now, but the point is this king is just permanently weak. Like I don't have to checkmate right now. I can checkmate later. My rook goes to the 7th, and black is like totally paralyzed. And I can basically, I have time to reposition my pieces however I want. My queen can come here, and there's just too much pressure. This is a threat. This is weak. Okay, if you trade off like this, then this diagonal becomes open, for example. And this is just a totally lost position for black. There's really nothing you can do. So this might happen, and okay, now white is just going to be clearly winning up way too many pawns. But yeah, like here, it's a very natural reaction for me. Like I think I had probably less than a minute at this point. So here, time control happens on move 40, I believe. So, and we were like getting right up to the very end of this time control, and we both had very little time. And yeah, I mean, here in this pressure situation, it's easy to make a mistake like that. And I could throw a win away into a draw. This was my first opportunity I had to beat Shabalov. So I've played many games against him, and he's always beaten me. And this one game where I was close to winning, but it slipped through my fingers.
Hey, Lev, how did you win a pawn?
Oh yeah, earlier. Okay, I didn't include the whole game, but it started off as kind of a equal-ish middle game. He actually played the hedgehog with black, so I had kind of the same position that we had in the last game, except I was playing white with a knight against the bishop. And he made some mistakes and allowed me to open up the H file, and I ended up winning a pawn. But yeah, here, okay, he defended well to get, to this position. He's not like totally busted yet. And just one mistake like this can throw away a lot of winning chances, allowing the queens to be traded. So yeah, so basically, the rule is, yeah, if you're up in material, you do want to trade, but the more important rule is if your king is safe, then you don't want to trade queens. That's true no matter what, basically. Because the queen, you won't be able to play checkmate now. I can't do this now because the queen is there. But later I could. Later, if this queen moves and I get here, this is going to be bad. If my queen ever gets here and you don't have queen c6, this is going to be bad. So a permanently weak king, that's kind of the biggest problem you could have, basically. So yeah, okay, that was a quick example. I didn't want to take too much time on that. But yeah, if anybody else has a question here, yeah, go ahead. Or otherwise, I'll go to the next position.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yeah,
Rather than black trying to trade queens or with that rook to C1 maneuver, what if black had instead chopped the knight?
Oh, you could take this right away, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's playable. I mean, that would happen, okay, later in this variation, black ended up doing that. But okay, it would be very similar. The rook will go to c7, and once I have this and this with my queen on the long diagonal, then that's going to be very difficult for black to hold. Because, like, I mean, even you can stop me, but I'll still invade somewhere. Like here, I'll go here.
Thanks.
You'll probably end up losing these pawns trying to defend.
Thanks.
This is a hopeless position for black.
Got it.
Just because of that weak king. So yeah, that's the important thing to understand. All right, so I have a couple more examples. So I know we still have some time. And okay, the next examples are a little bit more involved. So here, all right, so once again, I've hidden the players, so I don't want anybody to be biased. If I'm playing one side, then that side must be better or something. But that's not how this works. So this position was also from one of my games, but I'm not going to tell you which side I was playing yet. And the question here is, okay, it's black to play. And the question is, okay, who wants to open up the position? Black could play a move like d5, that's legal. And that's going to probably lead to some opening up of the position. White will probably end up playing c takes d5, and the position will open up. Who is that good for? And does black want to open up the position like this? What do you guys think? And you don't have to calculate anything. It's just kind of on general principles. Yeah, did I cut someone off there? Richard, I think you need to unmute yourself.
I'll mute again, okay. Yeah, it should be good for white because he's got the two bishops, so the position opens.
All right, so yeah, that's one of the first things we should notice here, right? White has the two bishops. And also, white, okay, we would think as compensation for the two bishops, black has managed to double these pawns. And it's logical to think if you play d5, you let white undouble his pawns, and you open up the position for the two bishops. So what you're saying is very logical. Does anybody else want to add anything? Does anybody else want to agree, disagree with that?
I just wanted to add that white's unopposed bishop is the dark square bishop, and I'm not really seeing like what obvious targets black has that would make it like a better bishop to try to open up. So it's not clear to me that the two bishops are like a huge advantage right now. And meanwhile, the white pawns, like because they're kind of being restrained right now, I feel like the knights could jump into some good squares.
All right, so yeah, this bishop on h4, I agree with you. It is the unopposed bishop, so I have a light squared bishop to counter white's light squared bishop. This bishop has no opponent. But okay, at the same time, a lot of white's pawns are actually here on dark squares, and it's not really clear if you can do anything better than like bishop takes knight. The bishop back here doesn't really do much.
You know, Lev,
Maybe the two bishops aren't as important here. Yeah, Cliff.
to me, normally you'd want to, in this type of structure, Black would want to play some fixing move like c5. But in this particular circumstance, it doesn't look very effective because after White's so prepared to play d5 and stop Black's bishop from ever coming out, he's already controlling the e5 square. His bishop and knight control c4 really well. It seems very hard for Black to get any counterplay. I think it's almost like surrendering. So Black has to do something out of the box here. Maybe d5 is the right idea, which is really unusual.
Yeah, so you kind of hit it right on the money there. So normally in this structure, like, okay, Aaron Nimzovich, when he was talking about these positions where he's doubled these pawns and now, they must be kept under lock and key or whatever. He would play, okay, the plan is to play c5 and then you take a million moves to, try and get this pawn on c4 and then you're up a pawn. Except here, it's not as effective because White is actually going to play d5. In fact, from this position, this is probably a positional threat, I would say. This is a move White could seriously consider. Just to blunt this bishop on b7. Even if you allow the knight to come to c5, like let's say I make some random move for Black and White plays d5. And okay, well actually I can't play knight c5 right away because I may have to worry about this, right? So it's not so easy. But even if I could, the bishop will just step back to c2 and the important point is Black is going to be kind of cramped. This bishop is not really going to be that great. This knight doesn't really have any good outposts. The e5 score is not available because of White's pawn here. So yeah, this position would actually be good for White. White is the one who wants to close the position with d5. But why? Why? There's actually something specific. There's like one particular piece or pawn that I can point to in this position and tell you this is why Black wants to open up the position.
I had a quick question before we switch positions. In this position with the white pawn on d5, would Black consider the move c6?
Okay, let's say like here. Yeah, Black probably should, because otherwise, this bishop is not really going to be doing much. You can go to c8, but that's kind of like a one-trick bishop. My queen will just move, and then it's not really clear where on this diagonal the bishop is going to be doing anything. So yeah, c6 would be a good idea for Black there. But actually, yeah, here, there's something in the position that's more important than White's bishop pair. And it's not obvious at all here, but if we go through like 5 or 10 more moves, it will be very obvious, trust me. But the trick is to see it here. What's going on here that makes Black want to open up the position?
Black castle with his queen?
Yeah, that's one thing. The queen on f8 is really not doing very much. So if you don't play d5, it's kind of hard to see what this queen is going to end up doing. Okay, you could fianchetto your queen. I'm not sure how good that is, but yeah, the queen is not very good on f8.
I've lost a couple games with a fianchetto queen. It's not good.
Yeah, in fact, if you're really good, you get it all the way to h8. It's like Mikhail Tal or something, did something like that. Goes queen to h1.
I thought
What
that
do you
was
guys think it is?
So Lev, what is the question you're asking? Which piece?
So why specifically does Black want to open up the position with d5? Like, why is Black so willing to play d5? And this is the best move, d5 in the position. And this is what happened in the game. And why, Black is willingly allowing White to do this and undouble his pawns. And the question is why? Why does Black want to do that? Why does Black not want to just keep the position closed and play with the knights against the bishops?
Could it be that he wants to activate his queen perhaps to a3?
That's one idea, yeah. One idea is to activate the queen on that diagonal. But actually, okay, what is the game all about? How do you win the game of chess?
Checkmate.
Checkmate, yeah. Whose king is safer here?
White's king? I don't know.
One is that
tricky question.
With the move d5, the queen will have a place to go out.
Yeah, so after d5, you're saying the queen will be able to get out, right?
The queen can go to one of these files.
Yeah, so that's one of the main ideas to play d5, right? And after cd, actually, black followed up with queen d6. So take on d5 with the queen. But okay, here, try and recognize, okay, why actually is white's king might be a little bit more uncomfortable than black's king. What has white done specifically in his position that makes that king more vulnerable? There's like one specific piece or pawn that I can point to and tell you that's why this king is a little bit more vulnerable.
F4.
Maybe
F4.
because the pawn move, the h6 move was weakening.
Well, the h6 move, it's weakening if white is able to, break through like this, g4, g5. But okay, in the game that didn't end up happening. He didn't get time to do this. But actually, Jim, what you're saying is very relevant because let's say like black plays a slow move like this, and here white plays d5. Now with this bishop shut off, this is actually a very dangerous plan, g4, g5. And yeah, that pawn on h6 will be, black is going to wish that pawn was back on h7. That's going to be a target. But actually, no, black can take advantage of the fact that white has played f4. And the reason this move is weakening for white is, okay, not only does now you can never play f3 and block the bishop on this diagonal, but you've also exposed the second rank. That's also very important. This pawn back on f2, if I ever get a rook to e2 or rook somewhere here, and you have a pawn on f2, then okay, your king will still be okay. I won't be able to attack the g-pawn. But with this pawn advanced like this, if I ever get a rook or a queen onto the second rank, it's going to be a big problem because you're going to have a hard time dealing with threats on the g2 pawn. And that's true even in the endgame. Like, the pawn here, if the pawn was on f3 or f2, that would change the evaluation of the position like completely. Either one of these, and then I would say, yeah, probably white's doing fine. But after d5, here, so I'll flip the colors here, because actually I was playing black here. So I don't know if I tricked anybody and made them think that I was playing white because I love the two bishops. But actually here, I was playing black. And I recognize that I have to be careful because this is one of white's ideas and I don't have anything to do about that. So d5 is kind of like out of necessity, I play it. And just look what happens. It's not obvious that this king is weak, but let's go a couple more moves and I think it will be obvious soon. Queen d6. So I want to actually recapture with a queen and have this nice battery. And okay, plays knight c4. Now, okay, the other idea is you could maybe take on f4, but okay, I thought, well, at the very least, maybe rook f1. And my queen actually doesn't have too many good squares to go to. So I can't retreat back here. In fact, my only square is to go to g4. And if we trade queens, then, okay, that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to attack the king. And that's hard to do if we trade queens. So yeah, after rook f1, I don't think I have any other squares. So I can't go anywhere else. This knight on c4 is really good. So yeah, but after the simple, queen takes d5. White plays knight e5. I take and I play knight e4. So this was the position I had in my head. When we came back here and I played d5, I was envisioning that this would happen. We would get this position and my knight would end up on e4. And I thought black was doing very well here. Because even though the position is opened up, right? White has the two bishops. I've undoubled white's pawns, but actually none of that matters here. The only thing that matters is this bishop on b7 is so powerful. This knight on e4 is better than the bishop on h4 for sure. Like that bishop can't do anything. And these center pawns, they're just targets. I'm attacking the pawn on c3. Next, I'm gonna probably play c5. And open up the position even more. If I play c5, open up the c file, and my rook can invade, right? Then that's how things start to go wrong for white. Once I open up a file and my rook starts to invade, my rook either gets to c2, right? That's a big problem. So it's hard to see the danger, like back here. But it becomes obvious once we get to a position like this. And even more so, okay, if we go even further, bishop e1 was played to try and save the c3 pawn. And now, okay, I play knight g5, attacking the queen. And actually, I want to point this out also. So, like, I could play c5 right away, and white might try to play a move like queen f3 and trade everything off on e4. And if this happens, we could get an endgame like this. We could very well get this kind of endgame where we trade everything off here. And this is another chess misconception that I find people don't always understand too well. We have opposite colored bishops. So, normally we think, okay, that means things should be pretty drawish. But actually here, that's completely not true. If we just had the opposite colored bishops, then I would agree with you. But just because we have one set of rooks on, that makes things totally different. I can play rook c8 here. And yeah, once again, my rook gets to c2, you'll be wishing you had a pawn here or here to block my bishop. But because white did this earlier, there's really no good answer. Rook c2 is going to happen next move, and this is pretty bad for white. Probably not losing, but white will have to fight hard to make a draw here, if it's possible. Just because, opposite colored bishops, when you're attacking, this bishop on e1, it can never really oppose my bishop. That's why when you're attacking, you want to have opposite colored bishops. When you're defending, you desperately want to avoid a situation like this. Like here, okay, if this was a light squared bishop, it'd be completely different, but dark squared bishop, white is like almost losing. So yeah, I think, okay, well, I played knight g5. I think I saw something like this was possible, and I didn't even want to allow white to get into an endgame and trade queens, so I played knight g5 to keep the queens on the board. And after the queen moves, now I play c5. So, okay, already white's pieces are kind of tied down. His queen has to stay guarding the g2 pawn. So that limits white's possibilities here. And the rook on a1 also, it's been sitting there the whole game. So okay, he plays bishop f2. I was threatening to take on d4. So two bishops, but they're pretty passive. They're not doing anything. Takes, and I go to the c file. So this is like the attack basically plays itself. Once my rook gets active, I can play rook c3 and threaten to take the bishop. The queen will be overloaded. White can't really contest the c file. You can't get the rook to c1, and also the rook has to guard the a pawn. If I win the a pawn, I'll have these two connected passed pawns. So I think by this point it's becoming obvious that white is in a lot of trouble. So all right, he tries to fight. So I'm playing a pretty experienced, I believe he is an FN. But okay, he's played in a lot of tournaments. His name is Larry Gilden. I don't know if any of you know him or have heard of him. But yeah, he's been around for a while. He's played in a lot of tournaments, and he definitely is a tricky player. So he found a lot of tricks in this position, that's for sure. So okay, first it's time for my tricks. So you can't take the knight because this is crushing, and you won't be able to take that. Okay, if you move the queen, then at the very least I could take this, and I'm up a pawn and I'm attacking, so this has to be good for black. So yeah, he has to save his bishop. He defends it. Now I play knight e4. So yeah, okay. Well, the queen is attacked. Moves it. And now I take the pawn on a2. So okay, there's some tricky pins going on here, but for now you can't take on e4 because of the rook on c3. But all right, after bishop e1, things get a little bit tricky. Rook moves, he plays bishop b4. And the one case where these bishops might become a little bit dangerous is, if this bishop can somehow get active, like, I mean, the d6 square, that's a hole, right? The bishop, imagine the bishop is on d6, and this queen and bishop are lined up, and you invade on h7, right? Then yeah, these two bishops could be pretty powerful. Or if this diagonal was unblocked and you had like a bishop on d4 pressuring here, right? And the queen on g4 and bishop on d4 attacking the g7 square, that's what white needs to have in this position to make these bishops work.
Hey,
But
Lev, you went over that very quickly. Could you just review maybe that last little?
oh yeah. So like basically all I'm saying is that this bishop on b4 would be much more dangerous if white didn't even have these pawns in the center. So like imagine you put the bishop on d4, you get rid of the pawn on e5, you just get rid of these pawns. They don't really help white. Put the bishop here, and then you put the queen on like g4 or something. And with these two bishops on d3 and d4 hitting the king side, right?
No.
You're attacking the g7 square. If you ever play g6, then there may be bishop sacrifices like this. You know, the knight is in the way, but you know, you kind of see what I'm saying, right, Jim?
Yes, much clearer. Thanks.
This position's not, or the center is not wide open enough for the bishops to be effective.
Got it.
So yeah, so here actually there's a nice tactical trick that black has. So I was expecting this move bishop b4, and I had prepared a little trick. And I didn't see how it wins right away, but it looks pretty good for black.
Is it knight c3?
Knight c3. Yeah, knight c3 is interesting. Probably. Yeah, probably he plays. Yeah, this gets. Oh, no, not queen f2. Maybe here. Yeah, knight c3. This gets a little bit tricky. Because actually no, I think he should play queen g4. And if you take this, I take your rook. Yeah, knight c3 is not a bad move, actually. I think there is some tricky defense here for white, but I'm not seeing it right here. But no, actually here, if I just play rook takes d3, white kind of doesn't have a good way to recapture that. Because if you take with a rook, then I check and pick up the bishop. So he took with a queen instead, but now I get access to the f2 square. So okay, this looks pretty good. I didn't see how it wins right away, but I mean, you know, there's got to be some knight discovery, I thought, and there's going to be checkmate on g2. But actually, it turned out not to be so simple. So here, okay, I gave some checks. And I realized here that, okay, like knight f2 looks pretty good. You threaten a fork, you can play here next move, or queen g4, threatening checkmate. But actually here, white has a sneaky defense. I think it's the only move for white. Otherwise, this is like totally crushing.
Hey, Lev, is it perhaps bishop to, what would it be? E1?
Yeah, bishop e1. So it's a tricky move, but you make a pin. If I take your queen, you take my queen. And I did sack the exchange, so okay, I don't want to trade queens. But yeah, I mean, also my knight is pinned. So this is probably, I probably have to do this actually. This may not work. You can just take it. And yeah, there's no follow-up here. But yeah, so okay, there's some tricks here. I have to be careful. But okay, I play some more checks. And eventually I find a different idea. I play queen f4 check, and after king g1, now I play knight f2. And the whole point is there's no bishop e1 pin. So okay, with the queen on h4, you could play bishop e1, but like this, there's no bishop e1. So this looks like it should be over now, because I'm winning back the exchange, and now I'm still attacking. But it's actually still not so simple. So I was like kind of shocked when the game was still continuing. He plays queen d2, and I realize here that things are not so easy. Because I still don't want to trade queens, but you're also attacking my knight. And okay, if I move my queen somewhere, then you're going to take my knight. So here, okay, I saw this in advance, but here black can actually play knight h3 check. And the whole point is you can't take the knight, because after this, the king only has one square, ace f1, and now this bishop comes out to a6, and this is lights out. You have to sack the queen. Yeah, this endgame should be winning for white. or should be winning for black. Probably can take that at the very least, or there may be some check to win the bishop somehow, but yeah, white is not gonna hold that. So okay, after check, you can't take the knight, so you only have one other move. You have to move the king to h1. Now there's a pin here, so you're not even threatening the knight. So I just move my queen out of the way. Yeah, there's no way to stop some discovery here, because the king can't go here. So okay, I think okay, queen e1. I just duck the queen out of the way, queen h5, avoiding a trade. And here, the threat at the very least is knight f2 check to win the rook. Then when he moved the rook, he kind of walked into this right away. Knight f2 check, king g1, and queen h1 is a nice shot. Because if you take, check, only one square, king e3, and that's checkmate. Bishop and queen are about as dangerous as knight and queen when working together like that. And once again, opposite colored bishops, right? Good for attacking. This bishop on b4 can never help defend the light squares, so I'm basically playing with an extra bishop here. But yeah, like once again, I just want to point out, like imagine in all of these positions, white has a pawn on f3. Like then this bishop wouldn't be doing anything, or a pawn on f2. Then, you know, like in all of these positions, if you give white his f pawn back and you let him play f3, then the position is totally different. And like going back all the way to the starting position, that's one of the things that I think about. When I see this pawn on f4, I imagine if the position ever opens up and I get my queen and bishop working together on the long diagonal, and I ever get my rook somehow to the second rank, then that's going to be hard to defend for white. So, you know, that's like, once again, this theme of this is not obvious that this pawn on f4 is important here. But, you know, once the game opens up, like here it becomes obvious that white is wishing he has still enough pawn here. So yeah, I know I went over some things fairly quickly there, but I hope that makes sense.
Hey, Lev, so yeah, there's a thought, right, that, you know, quote unquote, never play f3, which this game obviously, you know, it played f4, I guess. But so my question is, you also had talked about, you know, the exception, you know, if the rule is quote unquote, never play f3 or never play f6, you know, when is the exception warranted?
Well, if it wins a piece, then I probably would play f3 or f6. So if I play f3 and I fork 2 pieces here, that's probably one of the exceptions. So usually the exceptions are that, you know, I can't say like, I can't make a general rule for the exceptions because that kind of defeats the purpose. The exceptions are like a case-by-case basis. So like here in this example, if white had a pawn back on f2, he probably would want to play f3 because he would want to play f3. Because, you know, clearly the pawn there is much better than on f4. It blocked this bishop. Yeah. If you put the pawn in f3, then I don't have this e4 square ever as an outpost. So like, you know, there, it's kind of hard to make never or always rules in chess. There's always some case where, you know, I can say something different and the opposite will be true. But it's a case-by-case basis, Jim. You can't just make like a sweeping general rule, never play this, never play that. So
okay, got it. Thanks.
It's a case-by-case basis, yeah. So how am I doing on time? Am I out of time? I think I went 40 minutes there, right? Is it 4:20 now?
Hey, Lev, I think you've got time for a quick puzzle.
So yeah, first I want to give it back to Cliff, Ken, and Mike if you guys want to add anything, because I think, you know, we're wrapping up with the main event here. So you know, thanks to Cliff, Ken for your material, and Mike for helping set things up. Great to see everybody here. So yeah, I don't know, Mike or Cliff or Ken, any of you want to say something?
Oh, just thank everyone for coming. Great job, Lev. That was very interesting. I don't know. I think that's about it for me.
I just like to say, great job, you guys, with great lessons and great ideas, themes. And everybody, we're looking to open up at the Chess Center on July 1st. So we'll get some information out about that. And just want to say, nice to see everybody.
Mike, for camp, we're going to be starting, I think, the 29th, just so.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. So
but the
29th we're
Wednesday is the
opening.
first.
What's that?
But the Wednesday would be the first.
Oh, yeah, no, I meant like if there's any kids here that are getting ready to come to chess camp, it would be the 29th.
Oh, that's right.
So
I thought we were
Ken, our,
discouraging that.
What's that?
I thought we were discouraging the kids from coming here.
Ken.
so Ken, are Saturday tournaments also going to be starting again in July?
I have to talk to Ron.
Or,
I
okay.
haven't talked to him about that.
Thanks,
Yeah, see
guys.
if I can get the mute button. I need to get one.
Hey, another quick question. I noticed that it shows that this whole session is being recorded. So is that available or will be available?
Yep.
For $9.95 plus shipping and handling.
Yes.
We have special prices for razzle dazzle people.
Right. There we have a Rochester Chess Club YouTube channel, and these are going to get posted up there, and I'll put that in the newsletter as well, so you guys know when it's up.
Thanks, Mike.
So yep, it is being recorded.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Oh, hey, guys, today Caruana is playing Carlson in the finals of the Clutch Championship. Just in case anybody was.
Oh,
Yeah, he made a major comeback yesterday.
Against So,
Against
yeah,
So.
it was a big comeback.
Hey, I'm sorry, Ken. What?
Better against Carlson than he was against So.
I'm sorry, Ken. What did you say? I couldn't understand what you said.
I was just saying that Caruana was way behind Wesley So and made a big comeback.
Oh, I
yesterday.
see. Interesting. Lev, what do you think? Time for a puzzle or maybe
oh,
not?
you want some puzzles? So okay, I mean,
just one.
If you know, anybody here is free to stay or leave. Don't feel like we're keeping you from something. But yeah, I don't mind going over and I can share a quick puzzle just to humor you, Jim.
All right.
But there may not be any razzle dazzle. I can't promise razzle dazzle. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll find some end game study. There we go. Hold on. Yeah, let me find it first, then I'll share my screen. All right, I guess this is a good one. Just one moment. All right, so I don't know, Ken, you may recognize this one, but this is a very famous study.
Yeah, I know this one.
Yeah, Ken knows it. Cliff, you probably know it too. But this is white to move and win.
I think I know, but I shouldn't blurt it, right?
Bishop A7.
All right, so bishop A7. If I take, then you'll play H7, right? So bishop A7, I won't take. I'll play bishop A1.
And it will be king B1.
Okay, king B1. So I'm not going to let you take my bishop. I'll play bishop C3.
Then I will go to C2 king and bring my bishop to d4.
Okay, so king c2, then I play bishop a1 there. And I think you said it.
I think you said it too.
Do you want to say it again?
Then I go to
Come on, you didn't get lucky and say it.
Uh,
That would be disappointing.
so okay, the line Jamshid was suggesting is here bishop a7. So
d3.
if I take, then the pawn will just promote. There's no way to stop it. So the bishop moves. Now, okay, he wants to attack it with a king. Once again, if you let me take, then I'll promote. So here.
Go to d3 and e4.
Yeah, king
Okay,
c2, attacking the bishop again. If you go here, then we just trade. And I promote. So there's only one square left, a1. And now this move should be 4. Great. This is a very typical theme in bishop and pawn endgames. So basically the idea is if you take with a pawn, then I go here. You can't move that to open up your bishop. But if you take with a bishop, then I go here. If you play check, then I just take the bishop. And if you move the bishop somewhere, now I'm in time to go here. And once again, your pawn is blocked. King isn't fast enough.
Hey, Lev,
Yeah, Jim?
can you just show the original position? I just
Yeah,
want
this is the original position.
You got it.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, I guess one other line that I just thought of here is if I attack your bishop, you could attack the pawn, but I think white just plays h7. And then e4, I take your bishop. But yeah, okay, either way, this is, black doesn't have any way to stop my eventual bishop d4. But you can't play it now, because if you play it now, I take with a pawn, and you're not in time to play king d3. So you're h7, d3. So that's why we do this we do this shuffle first to go here, then here. Now once my king can go to d3, now this works. Should be fine. How's that, Jim?
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
That's the cherry on top of the hot fudge sundae, brother.
have you seen that before?
No.
No? All right,
Really?
good.
Yeah.
Ken and Cliff, you guys are probably like, I've seen this a million
Cliff
times.
I'm sure Cliff had seen that before, but I've taught that before.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Cliff, you've seen this before, right?
He's gone, Lev.
Oh, he's gone? All right.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
That's great. Thanks a lot.
yeah, sure. So, all right, yeah, I think we're ready to wrap up here then. So Cliff will not be able to do any more of these, right? This is his last one. Ken, have we decided if we're gonna do more of these or not?
I think we can do one more. I don't know what topic we want to do, but we can figure that out.
Okay. So I guess it'll just be you and me then, and we'll probably just do it for, I don't know, an hour and a half instead of 2 hours or something.
Okay. That's fine. 40 plus 10-minute breaks or whatever.
So yeah, next week is the 20th, and then camp starts the 29th.
Yeah, hopefully it does. I haven't heard back from Ron about what he has to do to open up first, though. But actually, I think he talked to somebody's parents here. Oh, they left. Okay, I can't ask them what he talked about.
yeah, well, hopefully things go smoothly with that. We can get the chess center opened up again.
All right, folks. Well, thank you again.
Okay,
Thanks.
we'll see you next week, I hope.
All right. Bye now.
Thank
Bye,
you,
thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Thank you.
For coming, and thanks for asking questions.
All right, bye-bye.